Another day, another factual inaccuracy from the Liberal government about the use of the government jet fleet, and as always, we've got the documents to prove it. Now, normally I don't care about the government using the government jets to get around when they must, but these are the same people who tell me that we're in some sort of climate change emergency, and so we should all become unemployed in the oil patch. And I don't understand why the Liberals and their public sector bureaucrat enablers insist on being totally wrong or totally inept or purposefully misleading so shamelessly about the use of the jets and why and when they're being used, because we keep catching them in this nonsense with their own paperwork. Now, the other day I showed you documents where the Department of National Defense told us there were no Challenger jet records for December 2020 when we filed for access to them. But then, 4 months later, the Department of National Defense told the House of Commons another thing in an order paper response. They said the Minister of National Defense had used the Challenger himself on December 18th, 2020. Now, you see, they could probably mislead access filers like us and get away with it, but they couldn't lie to the House of Commons. Well, these half-truth tellers in the DND are back at it once again, misleading us about the use of the Challenger. We filed for the July 2021 Challenger flight records, and yet the Department of National Defense told us there just weren't any flight records. No flights at all. I guess Trudeau and the gang were, staying home to stay safe. Yeah, right. Do you know why we filed for those exact flight records? Because the Prime Minister's travel was widely reported in the mainstream media. We know he traveled. We know how he got there. Just look at this. Here's a video of Trudeau in Saskatchewan on July 6th. Trudeau is speaking at the Cowesness First Nation.
Later today, I'll be visiting the site of unmarked graves to pay my respects and sitting down with many of you to hear your stories as survivors.
And then here's Trudeau meeting with Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi, re-announcing and, of course, naturally taking credit for funding promised years ago by Stephen Harper for a public transit initiative. So we sent the DND Trudeau's itinerary on July 6th and 7th. On July 6th, we know Trudeau was at the Museum of History in Gatineau, Quebec, and then he flew to Saskatchewan and met with Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe at the Cowesness First Nation at a powwow that was taking place. And then, July 7th, Trudeau was in Calgary. And frankly, he did an unusual amount of what we might loosely call work. He did a radio show at 8:30 in the morning. Then he was at a small business later on in the morning. Then he met with Premier Jason Kenney. And then he met, as we already showed you, outgoing Mayor Naheed Nenshi. There were media at all of these things, reporting it all, because that's what the media in Canada does. They just follow Justin Trudeau around like puppies. And yet, the weird misleaders in the DND bureaucracy thought they could, I guess, get away with denying those records exist for a widely reported trip. Why? What's the point? Do they not like us here at Rebel News? I think I'll survive. Do they think the public shouldn't know these things? Or is this some sort of pathology? I mean, who else are they misleading? And about what? Now, the response by the DND to our fact check of them with the Prime Minister's own itinerary, oh, it must be some sort of administrative error. I guess, if that's what we call a pattern of not telling the whole truth, I suppose. What they call a paperwork problem, an administrative oopsie-daisy, I would call a pattern of lies. But what do I know? I'm just some woman, so as you know, I could be experiencing this stuff differently, as Justin Trudeau might put it, to excuse away general bad behavior. We've caught 2 inaccuracies from the DND on flight records just this week, directly related to Challenger flight records. And I don't think these are accidents or mistakes. I know because I have proof of that coming up in another document package where we see the bureaucrats saying in internal emails that they are going to misreport this data if someone like me files for it. So So make sure you're subscribed to rebelnews.com so that you catch that story when it goes live. You won't see it anywhere else. And if you would like to support this sort of work, our accountability investigations through access to information, where we use the government's own documents and communications to catch them misleading the public or doing and saying things in private, in darkness, that they would never do in public. Please donate to our special fund at rebelinvestigates.com. And thanks again to everyone who already does. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. I think access to information investigations are so important because I think the public is entitled to know what their government and government employees are saying behind closed doors. I mean, after all, we're paying the bills. If you agree with me, we have a special fund to support this sort of investigation because it requires a lot of time and additional research. You can donate at rebelinvestigates.com.